This is the iconic rail corridor that runs through the city of Toronto, where you get that great iconic view of the CN Tower and the Rogers Centre. Now imagine this, right here, this entire rail corridor covered all the way to Blue Jays Way. 9 towers, 8,000 condo units reaching for the sky, and what's promised to be a park right in the middle. It's a bold vision for Toronto, one that would reshape the downtown entirely. But what will it mean for the city? Will it meet our growing housing and green space needs? Or will it just create yet another challenge for the city of Toronto? In 2016, Toronto dreamed of a massive urban park, a 20-acre green oasis built over this rail corridor. But that dream shifted dramatically when the landowners submitted an application to amend the official plan to allow for mixed-use development over this rail corridor instead of that planned urban green oasis park. City Council, of course, refused this application, and the landowners then went to the Ontario Land Tribunal, the OLT, to appeal this refusal. The OLT sided with the landowners to then allow for mixed-use development to happen on this very rail corridor. 9 towers, nearly 8,000 units, and a park labeled as potential would now define this space. And that's what brings us to where we are today, an ambitious project that promises to deliver housing and public space, but it has raised as many questions as it's yet to answer. With many wondering, of course, are we losing more than we're gaining with this space? So today I'm going to break it all down for you. What's planned, what's at stake, and whether this development is Toronto's next big step or just another missed opportunity. The rail deck development is one of the most ambitious projects Toronto has ever seen. Spanning the rail corridor from Bathurst, which is that bridge over there, the little one back there, all the way to Blue Jays Way. This is Spadina. Blue Jays Way is the next opening over there. This is Blue Jays Way, where the development will end. This proposal envisions a massive transformation of downtown space. Now, the development itself will be 9 high-rise towers built across 3 different blocks. You'll have west, center, and east, and the west block starts right at Front and Bathurst, and it will have a 7-story podium and 2 towers. Those 2 towers will be 36 and 40 stories. Then you have the center block, which is going to be right next to this block. Now we'll have an 11-story podium and 5 towers, 43, 58, 63, 68, and 72 stories tall. Then the final block is east of Spadina in this little opening area here, and it will have a 9-story podium. It will have 2 residential towers, which will be 65 and 61 stories tall, and it will also be home to the new Marriott Hotel, as they're right across the street right now, so this will become their new area. All in all, you end up with 7,986 residential units. For retail space, there's going to be around 150,000 square feet of retail. So if you've ever been to the food market at the Well, that's 70,000 square feet. So imagine double that and then spread out all the way from Front and Bathurst to Blue Jays Way. That's how much retail space you'll have roughly. Then their way of giving back to the community is building 3 daycares for the community. So each block will have its own daycare. And then for park space, they're promising to have 8.62 acres of land be green park space. But it's just potential, meaning there's no guarantee that this will happen. But they're promising not to build there for now, with the plan of it hopefully becoming a park in the future. More on that later on. Then another key selling point of this is the new Front and Spadina GO station. And so the developer is calling this a transit-oriented community because Front and Spadina will have a new GO station. Now, of course, this all sounds impressive on paper, but it's also raised plenty of questions. Are the unit sizes truly meeting the needs of Toronto residents? Is the promised park space ever going to be more than just promised? And is the project even viable given the estimated $6.5 billion cost, as well as the challenges of building over an active rail corridor? Now, when a project this big is proposed, it's not surprising that the community has a lot to say. The rail deck development has sparked some skepticism and some serious concerns on its impact on downtown Toronto. One of the biggest points of contention is the promise of park space. While 8.62 acres of the land is labeled as potential park, it remains just that, potential. There's no real vision or plan or even proposal that they've come up with. They've just said, here's 8.62 acres that we're not going to build on, and it could be a park. But construction is focused mainly on the towers themselves instead. And speaking of construction, the process itself won't be easy and will take a very long time because their working hours are limited from midnight to 5 a.m. on weekdays because they can't interrupt the train schedule and the maintenance schedule that they have going on in the rail corridor. And then there's the question of sunlight and views. Shadow studies are showing that you have the well here, these south-facing units will no longer have the amazing views that they have, as well as the great sunlight they have. Even right now, it's still early morning, and look at this tall building, perfectly clear. It's covered in sun, and it will be covered in sun the whole day until the sun sets. But with these new buildings, there's going to be a building right in front of that. And so all those units will no longer have the amazing amounts of sunlight they have or the perfect clear view that they have. Now you may say, well, that's just part of Toronto. That's how it is. People build condos next to condos. You lose your view. But these people were purchasing with the idea that there's a rail yard right there. Nothing will ever get built here. They'll always have a clear view. And that's what everyone's always thought, that the rail corridor is open land. Nothing will ever get built there. But now that's not the case if this goes through. I posted a tour of a unit at this exact building, or I think it's maybe that one. And I'll show you that now so you can see the view from that unit. Right into City Place. You're looking over the train tracks, which is super nice. And instead now that unit will just be looking at a tower with a podium with retail in it. And then traffic is a concern because Gardner, and then from the Gardner, you have Spadina right here. And of course, it's only 9 a.m. right now, so there's not much traffic. But everyone takes Spadina to get on the Gardner there. And so Spadina is totally stuck. Once you're 3 p.m., 4 p.m., 5 p.m., it's not going anywhere. And so people are concerned that this will just add more to that, and the traffic will overflow into the resident areas as it already does here in City Place. The traffic frequently overflows onto Fort York here and into the condos and their little side streets. The final major concern that the community has is affordability. The community is wondering, and rightfully so, if these housing units will even actually contribute to and help our housing crisis and add housing stock. But with most units being small 1-bedrooms, and even the 2-bedrooms are quite small, the development seems to be more of something to kind of maybe attract investors is their end goal. But with an estimated $6.5 billion price tag, which comes out to $800,000 a unit, many are wondering how the developer will even recoup their costs. They're either going to need sky-high unit prices or massive subsidies from the government to even do this profitably. At its core, the community as a whole's feedback comes down to one question. Does this development actually reflect the needs of Toronto residents and potential Toronto residents? Or is this just a project that's an Imagineering project to say, we built condos over a rail corridor? Let me get into some of the concerns that the community has. Let me give you the facts on them and if they're valid concerns or not. First, you have the traffic. So this is Spadina Bridge right behind me, and that's always completely stopped. But unfortunately, nothing can be done about that from a developer's perspective. People are asking them to build wider roads, but the traffic engineer that spoke actually gave a great example and said that traffic is like a noxious gas. You can give it lots of space, but it will just spread and seep and fill those empty spaces. So while wider and more roads seems like a good idea, at the end of the day, it'll just encourage more people to drive and create more traffic than there was in the first place because there will be more cars on the road. And so it's just a fact that you have to accept that there will always be traffic in this area. You're in the downtown of a city, right by a highway, so that's just how life is here. Now you might be thinking though, well, they said this is a transit-oriented community, so wouldn't that help with traffic? But let's look at the reality. The new GO station, they're building a new GO station right here at Spadina. This is Spadina, and front. This is front. So the new GO station is going to be actually right where these GO trains are parked. They're going to build it right there, and that will be the new GO station for the area. But it will be only serving the Barrie line, and the Barrie line already stops at Union, which is down that way just by a kilometer. So it's just stopping a kilometer earlier, which I get it. It's to reduce the influx of passengers at Union to reduce the amount of traffic at Union. But still, it's not a station that will benefit the new residents of this community because nobody downtown is using the GO train. It's for commuters to come into the city, not for downtown residents to leave the city. So maybe 5 people from this building will ever use that GO station stop, and that's it. So I'm not sure how they can call it a transit-oriented community, and that feels a bit misleading because something that's transit-oriented would be, say, for example, the Mimico project that I made a previous video out before because it's under receivership, Van Dyke's development. That's transit-oriented because it's out of downtown and they're building it right at a GO station, and those residents will then be able to go from their building directly to that GO station in a few seconds and then get on a train, come right into downtown. That's transit-oriented. The next concern is the lack of community services to support the new population from this development. I am sitting in Canoe Landing Park. That behind me is the Canoe Landing Rec Center and School, as well as this building. And this is all the space they have for the school. And Canoe Landing, I'm mentioning it because this is all there is for this area. So if they build 9 towers and add almost 8,000 units and the population increases by 16,000 people, there's nowhere for those people to go if they have kids or even themselves to go to a recreation center or to send their kids to school, because this area is at capacity for the school and this rec center. And you may be thinking, well, why can't the city ask them to then build community centers and schools like they can with the 15% of land for park space? Well, again, they're prohibited by Ontario legislation. There used to be a Section 37 in the Ontario Planning Act, which allowed municipalities to negotiate benefits like parks, daycares, other community benefits, rec centers, things like that, and ask the developer to build those. And in exchange, the city would usually give them more density, more height, or another tower. And it was a good negotiation process that allowed the city of Toronto to get community benefits for the community. But of course, Ontario government scrapped this in 2020, and they created the Community Benefits Change, or CBC. And now they put, with CBC, a cap on how much contribution can be done by a developer for community land. And that number is 4% of the land's value at the time of construction. And previously, when it was just open season and Toronto could negotiate to their heart's content, they would get anywhere from 10 to 15% of the land's value in community benefits. So 4% is a huge, huge cap, and that's why recently you've been seeing less community benefits and projects, and you won't be able to see much here aside from the 3 daycares that they'll do. The next concern is the units themselves. 74% of the units will be 1-bed or studio apartments. 17% will be 2 beds, and then 10% will be 3 beds. Unit sizes range anywhere from 436 square feet for the smallest bachelor apartment studios to 867 square feet for the largest average 3-bed unit. And these are the exact types of units that are currently sitting vacant in record numbers in Toronto. So of course, everyone is wondering, why are we building these? So at the community consultation, I asked Fengate the following question. We have a record number of vacant condos currently. It's clear generic housing supply is not what's needed, but the correct supply is. Most vacant condos are what we call shoebox condos, and are small 1 and 2-bed condos that range anywhere from 400 to 600 square feet, and the largest 2 beds you usually find are 700 to 800 square feet. What will be done to address this and ensure you aren't just building more useless housing supply that doesn't affect affordability? Fengate's response was then that their priority is to create affordable housing in terms of total price point.
What we're focused on here is creating affordable housing in terms of total price point. And so you'll see that the development does skew more towards the 1-bedroom units because at this point, that is what on a total basis is more affordable than the larger units, just in terms of a total payment size.
And to me, that logic is completely backwards. Let me go to the fridge to give you a bit of an analogy about this. Imagine you're at the grocery store. You need eggs, bread, and milk. Bread is the cheapest option right now. So companies decide to produce more and more bread while neglecting to make eggs or milk. The result, bread becomes cheaper, sure, but eggs and milk become even less affordable because they're in short supply. And that's exactly what's happening here in Toronto with 1-bedroom condos. With this project and their logic, by flooding the market with smaller units, we're really just ignoring the need for larger, more livable spaces, which then drives up prices for housing that people actually want and need. Now, let's go take a look at some of these condos to see what they're actually like to live in. Now first, let's check out a 1-bed. So the average size of a 1-bed at the Rail Deck development is 516 square feet. The unit I'm in right now is 535 square feet, so 19 square foot bigger, but it should give you an idea of the space you'll get. This is your bedroom. So this is lengthwise a double bed. This is widthwise a double bed. And so this is the space you have. Good amount of space on this side. And then you can get a nightstand here, and that's about it. And now I made it slightly larger. So now this is queen size. This is 80 inches. That is 60 inches. And then for living room, this is the size of a 2-seater sofa. So you would have this space, put your TV over there. If you then wanted to make it a 4-person couch plus love seat, it would look something like this. This is a good size living room, but you then have to consider the fact of a dining room somewhere if you'd like to have a little table to eat at, because this is all you have for kitchen space. So, as is pretty typical with most 500 square foot one bed condos in Toronto, you have to choose between couch or dining room table because there is no other spot to go unless you don't have a TV here and you have TV in bedroom. Then you could use that as your sofa, and where I'm standing, which is where the TV would go, you could then have this whole section as your dining room table. And this is a 2-bedroom that is 758 square feet. Now, the average size of a 2-bed for the rail deck development is actually 713 square feet, which is quite small that I couldn't really find any 2-beds that were that size. So this is the closest we'll have. So it's 45 square feet larger. You could imagine that the primary bedroom would be about this size. This is a queen size bed, so 60, 80. This would be 2-seater sofa size. And so they had TV over there, as you can see. They have the hookups. So 2-seater sofa. This is a twin size bed. So I kind of put it this way so it's in its nook. You have all this if you wanted to do anything else in here. You have space for a nightstand or put a desk against here. And this bedroom is just slightly smaller than the other one. So that's what you can expect for a 2-bed unit at the rail deck development. Just again, remember this is 45 square feet larger. So the average square footage of a 3-bed, the largest units at the rail deck development, is 867 square feet. The unit I'm in right now is 847 square feet. Here is one of the bedrooms and what it would look like with a double-sized bed in it. You walk in, so I have 75 inches here and then 54 inches along here. That's the size of a double bed. This section here is all you'd have for space. And then for living room space, you don't have much. It's kind of hard to imagine where a couch would go. So I have that down there as the couch, but this is your whole living room space. This is the other bedroom, which I'll show you next. And then this is your kitchen. So this is kitchen space. And then this is kind of where I just threw down the sofa. You'd look at a TV there, and then people would be able to walk by this way. So this is the primary bedroom with bed. Depending when the rail deck development is complete, let's say we use pre-construction prices for now, you can expect to be paying around, for something like that, especially with their high cost, it would be 1,500 square feet, let's guesstimate. So a unit this size, which would be their largest family size unit, would cost you around $1.3 million. And then if you're curious about the 3rd bedroom, this is the size of a crib. This is how much room you have around here. Now let's cover the biggest concern that community has, which is park space and community benefits. On paper, 8.62 acres of parkland sounds great. But with it being labeled potential park area, it doesn't really mean much because there's no guarantee it will ever be built, and there's no vision for it currently. In the consultations, when asked about this, the applicant for the rail deck development said this: "The plan for now is that we are promising not to build on areas outlined as park, but our priority is to build buildings. So those areas will be looked at when there is budget to do something with the space." So what I got from that is that you can expect these pieces of land that they're not going to build on to sit empty for years and years and years before somebody decides to do something with them, because they're not going to spend money on it because it gives them no return on an investment. And the city, I doubt, has the money to turn 8.62 acres of land into green space. It'll most end up looking like the park that was also supposed to be a park by Rogers Center, show you that now, and just end up being a hardscape park, if it does become a park. But not much can be done about the park space because, again, the city is limited by Ontario legislation. The province limits the city to asking developers for a max of 15% of the land to be green space. Anything beyond that is then up to the developer's own discretion. So in this case, the dark green priority park area could become park space, but the other potential areas could be anything and not park. When we look at the big picture of this project and the park, it raises a critical question. Is this park being designed to serve the people of Toronto, or is it just another box to check off on a development plan of hitting that requirement from the City of Toronto for 15% of the site to be park space? And building over active rail lines isn't impossible. It's been done. In fact, you have that is the CIBC building with the yellow over there, and they've partially built over the rail deck, but obviously this is much more extreme. But it's also been done in New York with the Hudson Yards project, although it cost $20 billion. It's been done in Melbourne, Australia, and Chicago's Millennium Park was also built over an active rail line. So it's not impossible, but it's definitely costly. Here in Toronto, the rail deck development is estimated to be around $6.5 billion. I've seen a few different figures online through the research, but $6.5 billion seems to be about right. But you never know about when this will be built, what the economy will be like at that time when it's done. But current economic conditions, $6.5 billion, which with almost 8,000 units comes out to $800,000 per unit. And this price tag is before factoring in the potential park that they will have, as well as any other amenities or public spaces. And these numbers to anyone will just, you can see they don't make sense and they don't add up without an extremely large public subsidy or extremely high unit costs, which then just put these units out of reach for most buyers. The housing side of the rail deck project also has its challenges. I touched on the aspect of how the units being built are adding a housing type that really isn't in demand. So let's look at the broader market implications of this. The project has units that I believe really only appeal to investors and not end users. But if the demand for rental units change, especially as we're seeing the immigration amounts getting cut, these small units will most likely sit empty like so many already are. And of course, there's the financial angle to consider with the cost per unit that I mentioned being around $800,000. These are going to be expensive units unless they receive subsidies, but let's say they don't. These units are going to be way too expensive, even if they're not complete for another 20 years. I don't see how they would recoup that cost of $800,000 per unit. So we're left with a bigger question. Is this project really something that's needed, and will it help our housing crisis? Or is it just another problem for the City of Toronto? Here are my thoughts. I try to stay impartial, but this is one development that just doesn't really make sense to me. It's not even about not liking the project, it's a fundamentally bad development that offers no tangible civic gain. The park is pretty much entirely imaginary, relying on subsidies from somewhere to materialize because the developer says they're not going to build it, they don't have the budget for it, so that's the first aspect of it. Then on top of that, there's another aspect, which is that the whole entire project relies on the city giving the developer part of the Front Street right away because the city owns that part of Front Street and the developer needs it to build on. And so the entire project pretty much relies on that happening. So the city can just say, no, we're not going to give it to you. It's a unique mix of unambitious design, a lack of city-focused building, and an over-reliance on public funds, really. So what do you think? Is this development the bold move that Toronto needs, or is it another missed opportunity wrapped in controversy? I'd love to hear your thoughts, of course, so feel free to leave a comment down below. Let me know where you stand on this project and what you think about it, and maybe if you think it'll even ever happen and if it's feasible or not. And if you found this video helpful or even just thought-provoking, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel for more deep dives into Toronto's real estate. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.